We then go to AEW Dynamite, September 30th, 2020. Ricky Starks versus Darby Allin. So we get a Darby Allin video. His friend, I forget who this guy was, but he's calling Team Taz a bunch of cowards and talking about how Ricky Starks is imitating Darby and it's a serious form of flattery. And then they just take a body bag, which I assume had Darby Allin in it, and slide him down a long wooden thing. It's not smooth. He's bumping all over the place, bouncing left and right. This looks so absolutely brutal. So it's Darby Allin and Ricky Starks, and they're having such a good wrestling match. It's just beautiful. Both guys look awesome. Darby does a big tope, which brings up Brian Cage, and I'm thinking that this will lead right to the finish. But no! Will Hobbs comes out to brawl with Cage, and they're in the same weight class at least, so it looks good, and they brawl to the back. So Ricky takes over, and he hurt his back taking that tope in the outside, so he's selling his back while applying a half Boston Crab. It's just the best. And there's an epic slap fight, and Ricky survives a rolling stunner thing, hits a big spear in midair, and he gets two, and he's practically crying that Darby kicked out. And they go up for a long battle on the top rope, and finally Darby shoves him down and just squishes him with a coffin drop for the win. This is even better than the NXT main event. This is an awesome wrestling match. This is like pay-per-view caliber.
Well, I love this match, and one of the things that I really like about these matches, like a lot of times we will see people work over body parts on WWE shows, but it's just for something to do. It's not like it leads to the finish or it sets up somebody's finish.
And by the end, it's ignored.
Well, I'm going to work over this guy's shoulder, and then like we're going to do all our near falls like nothing happened. No, I'm going to work over his leg, but he's going to run. They worked over body parts, and Ricky Starks had a bad back. And he sold the bad back throughout the entire match. And finally, at the end, Darby hits the coffin drop to his fucking bad back, and he pins him, and he gets the win.
Yes.
That's all I ask for.
Yeah.
I just want my shit to make sense. That's all I care about.
Ricky was face down on the coffin drop, so the coffin drop was to his bad back.
It was a coffin drop to the bad back.
Yes.
The bad back that I had to watch them do all of these spots and selling the back and everything like that. I was rewarded at the end. It wasn't just something to do. It wasn't, well, everyone always does their comebacks anyway and doesn't sell anything. It wasn't any of that. It played into the story of the match. I loved it.
Before we move on, so it may have been in this match, it may have been later, but there's a point where they're recapping this Darby versus Team Taz feud. And they re-aired the spot from the Battle Royal where they threw Darby in the body bag with attacks and slammed him on the ramp. And at the time, I was so focused on the fact that you couldn't see in this body bag, and B, the thumbtacks in there, that I didn't really notice just how violently he hit that ramp. That was even more brutal than I remembered.
Dude, the match hadn't even ended. I was texting people to find out if Darby was alive.
Oh, my God.
That's literally all I do. Like, on Wednesday nights, I just sit and I text people to make sure that everyone's alive after the shows.
Especially him. This
week it was Shotzi.
That's true. That's true. Tonight on Dynamite, Eddie Kingston will pick a challenger for Jon Moxley. Dr. Britt Baker will return to action. Orange Cassidy versus 10. FTR versus SCU for the tag titles. And Chris Jericho versus Isaiah Cassidy, the other Cassidy. Cody comes out for a promo. Dasha, the only interviewer in wrestling who actually has a personality, except I guess everyone else in this company, actually. She says, this injury is a bit of a mystery. How do you feel? And Cody name drops, of all people, his trainer, Al Snow.
Yes,
I was
Al
not expecting
Snow.
I know he did train him, but it was not a name I was expecting to hear on Dynamite in 2020. Says Al Snow told him, you always wrestle hurt. You never wrestle injured. Well, if I could go back and ask Al one question, I would ask, what if that injury is spiritual, if it hurts your spirit? Talks about how pre-pandemic, wrestlers always shake hands backstage. It's not a sign of respect. It's because we need each other. That marquee always has two names on it. It's you versus your opponent. Imagine my shame, he says, when I lost that TNT title in 3 minutes. And then I get that call wrestlers pray for, but pretend they don't. The call from Hollywood. Suddenly I find myself on a show with Rosario Dawson, and Jennifer Nettles, and Snoop Dogg, who he called a piece of Americana. Which I guess, when you think about it, he is, but it never would have occurred to me to describe him that way.
I did laugh at that line. A slice of Americana. Snoop Dogg.
Yes. He says, who am I to be with them? I'm the guy that got beat in 3 minutes. And at this point, Dasha feels so badly for him. She's trying to encourage him to get back on his feet. And Cody says, people talk about being the future of this company or the ace of this company. The only people who can make a claim to that are Hikaru Shida, Jon Moxley, or the TNT champion, Brody Lee. Brody Lee, you've challenged me to a dog collar match, a match that violent. As executive vice president of this company, my answer has to be no. And there's booing, and he goes to leave, but he stops, and he comes back, he yanks the mic away, and he says, no regrets, no looking back. We enter much different than we leave. TNT title dog collar match next week, I accept. It was awesome. And so Brody Lee in his hideous suit come out for a brawl. Big giant melee. Brandy's out there doing flip dives on the entire Dark Order, brawling with Anna Jay. Nyla Rose is just beating up random women that had nothing to do with anything. It goes, it brawls for a while, stop. Brawl for a while, stop. It goes forever. It reminded me of, and this is a story like you and me and like 3 other people will even have a reference point for, but I'm going to say it anyway. Do you remember the night Shooter the Clown turned heel in ICW? It was Shooter, and he joined Buddy and Richie. You may have been in their crew, I forget, but they just kept going. Like they hit the ring and laid out a bunch of geeks. I was one of them, and left, and they came back and beat us all up again, and left and came back and beat us all up again. It just went on and on and on, and at one point, somehow I made it backstage. I just dragged myself out of there to avoid a 5th beating, and Shooter and Buddy come running into the locker room, and they're giggling. They're having so much fun. And Buddy just says, you want to do it again? And Shooter says, yeah! And they run back out to do it again. I can imagine the same thing happening here on national television on Dynamite, because sometimes, everyone, wrestling is just fun, and you want to keep doing it.
Well, I thought this was fantastic. I think Cody's just the greatest.
Cody's awesome.
But. I did not like getting all of the women involved. And I said this on Observer Live today. Amazingly, I got no blowback. I was expecting people to just be infuriated. But, I mean, this is the truth, everybody. The women should not have been involved in this. It has nothing to do with them being women. In fact, if this had been Brandy
And
coming
Anna
out
Jay.
to do this promo and challenging Anna Jay to a dog collar match, and they got in a pull apart, and all of a sudden Cody and Brody Lee got involved, I would have been upset that Cody and Brody Lee got involved, because this is about setting up a dog collar match on national television based off Cody getting beaten and destroyed in 3 minutes by Brody Lee. There should be nothing else going on. The focus is on that match. If the shoe had been on the other foot, I would have said the exact same thing the other way. I realize that Brandy and Anna Jay had a match together on Dark that everybody thought was really good, and now they want to bring it to Dynamite. Great. I'm all for that. But that did not need to be set up here. And Nyla Rose, I don't know what the fuck Nyla Rose was doing in here. She's jumping the rail and beating people up. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, we're in the middle of building up a giant match for next week on free television. What is going on here? And why are we taking attention away from Cody and Brody Lee? But yes, the segment was fantastic outside of that.
If it had been QT Marshall and Colt Cabana brawling instead of Anna Jay and Brandy, it still would have been dumb.
It still would have been dumb.
Yes.
Why is anybody else getting involved right now? That's not the focus of this segment.
Yes. Tony Schiavone is interviewing FTR. They say that best friends are just backyarders, participation trophy guys. SCU, their opponents tonight, that's a different story. They are two of the best in the world, the first ever AEW tag champs. To cement our legacy, we have to beat SCU. So Tony asks, what about the Young Bucks? And FTR says, well, every chance the Young Bucks get, they blow it. They had the first match in Dynamite history, the tag team tournament. They blew it against the Private Party. They had the tag title match against Hangman and Omega. They blew it then. in the gauntlet match that we won, they blew it. It's great if Dave Meltzer loves them and throws them all the stars, but they don't deserve a title match. And Tony starts to speak up and say something, but before he can get very far, Matt Jackson super kicks him. Tony goes down. And FTR points, and Matt just leaves, by the way. That's his point's made. FTR points out, you guys keep kicking old men and refs. We're the champs right here. Pick a fight with us. This feud is very strange.
So, obviously, Nick Jackson is not around. And I don't know where he is. I don't know what the story is. He's only missed a week, but this show was taped last week, okay? So last week, they did the deal where Matt comes out of the room and he goes, I got this, Nick. And then he does his little interview and he breaks the phone and then he goes back in. And like the moment I saw that, I was like, Nick's not there. I mean, they did a really good job, but he's not there. I noticed. I don't know how many other people noticed. I presume most people probably thought it was weird that he never came out. But this one here was just preposterous. Like, 2 feet fly in to double super kick Tony Schiavone, but you never see the other body. You just see 2 feet, and then the other foot vanishes, and Nick cuts a promo, and he goes, "That's good, man. It's good, Nick." And then he follows. It was so ridiculous.
It happened so fast, I didn't even catch that.
Oh my God, you got to go back and watch it. Oh no, it was 2 feet. They got a stunt foot to convince you that Nick was there on this show.
Everyone watch. I think a fly just landed on my camera. On the camera, it's gone now. Everyone listening to this, most of you haven't seen it, but there was a comedy show in Seattle called Almost Live. Go load up some Billy Kwan skits if you want to see what 2 feet in action can look like. Now I think about it, it's not unlike what happened in here with the Young Bucks.
So they go back, and the announcers are appalled, and Ross is appalled. They super kick Tony, and Excalibur says, "I hate it." Taz says, "Well, I mean, they had to send a message." I couldn't even concentrate because I was laughing so hard at the phantom foot, the stunt foot that they used in place of Nick Jackson.
Would you say it was a worked foot?
It was definitely a worked foot. It was a gimmick foot.
A gimmick.
What it
That's
was.
even better. That's even better. Gimmick
Yes.
foot. Dasha interviews SCU. They don't say much. They just guarantee they're going to win tonight. And then as they are passing through Gorilla, Shawn Spears is just hanging out there. He sarcastically wishes them luck. That was weird. So it's FTR versus SCU with Hangman Page in his dope cowboy shirt on commentary. I don't know if he was really drinking, but he didn't have a lot to say tonight. I miss Kenny Omega with having Hangman out here. He had one good point at the very beginning before the match even started when he says, yes, I know Kenny Omega's out here every week saying he's a singles wrestler, but I haven't actually seen him have a singles match yet. So I'd be a bad friend if I didn't try to talk him into another tag match. So they're doing this match. SCU here, Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian. And very early on, Chris Daniels is at ringside. And Cash is running the ropes. And when he runs the rope by Daniels, he does a face plant and jumps up and points at him and accuses him of tripping him. And the ref didn't see it, but he takes Cash Wheeler at his word. He ejects Chris Daniels. He's out of the match. So you do this little tag match. It's fun. It probably would have been better at 10 minutes than it was at 15, but I enjoyed this. Frankie Kazarian, everyone, if you go back and watch this or you haven't watched this yet, watch him do his hot tag and remember he is 43 years old. He's still he is a young buck at age 43. So there's a big Tower of Doom power slam spot that's very scary, but thankfully nobody died. And Scorpio Sky keeps going for covers, but he can't. He's going for cradles and covers and near falls. And finally he tries a suplex. Tully trips him and holds the foot down from the outside. Dax is out there holding Tully down. There's 400 pounds now holding down Scorpio Sky's foot. Of course he does not kick out. The champs win. And as Excalibur astutely notes, this is exactly what FTR accused Chris Daniels of doing.
Yes.
Now they actually did it and they won. This is why I made the comparison about the NXT main event being like a Dynamite match. Because that's rare on NXT. It's common on Dynamite. The finish is a payoff of something else that happened earlier. It all makes sense.
You know what's funny is oftentimes I ask questions and it's usually about WWE and it has to be explained to me what happened. And then it's like, well, why didn't the fucking announcers explain it? Or I noticed something that was meant to happen in the match, but the announcers don't explain it, and then I'm explaining it. I didn't even know that Excalibur pointed that out until you just told me right now. But I knew immediately when this match was over how fucking perfect it was. These assholes faked a trip to get rid of Chris Daniels, so it was now an unfair fight, and then they did the exact same goddamn thing to win the match. It was perfect. And you know what this match reminded me of? When you tell a joke, and it's funny, and then you keep telling the joke, and it's not funny anymore, but you keep going, and then it gets funny again.
I see your point.
I'm watching this match, and it's really good. But then I thought the same thing, like, okay, it's going on too long. Well, we should have just wrapped it up by now. But they just kept going.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, I'm like, holy fuck, this match is great.
It picked up again.
Yeah, and then by the end, I was like, I'm glad they didn't cut any of this match.
Okay.
Thought it was a very, very, very good match, and the finish was beautiful poetry.
We go to the announce desk, where they say, ladies and gentlemen, exciting news. There's going to be an 8-man tournament. The finals will be at Full Gear. The winner will get an AEW World title shot. And then Taz says, wow, well, opportunities for that title are very rare. Now, I know shit happens. I know this was probably not their plan, but they just had a title match last week, and they're doing another one tonight, and we don't even know who the challenger is. They're getting less rare by the show. So they have 3 participants for this 8-man tournament announced. There will be Jungle Boy, there will be Rey Fenix, and there will be Kenny Omega. And Hangman hears that name, and he looks up, and he just takes his drink and says, I gotta go. And he goes. Isaiah Cassidy versus Chris Jericho. So they're doing this match. And early on, Jericho gets thrown into the crowd of wrestlers at ringside. And suddenly, Chris Jericho is brawling with Dr. Luther. Now, I know they've been friends forever. And by the end, at least it kind of made sense why they were doing this, but Dr. Luther hasn't been on TV in who knows how long. It feels like maybe in all of 2020. And now he's fighting with Le Champion. It's 2020, and they're building to a Luther-Jericho match. Now, as it turns out, they're doing this for the anniversary show. They probably said, Chris, who's the one guy you want to work with? He said, my buddy, Dr. Luther. And that's cool. But if that's what they're doing, they could have just done it without this setup, because it was so weird to see them together. Although even weirder by the end, because Dr. Luther, it turns out, is in a tag team with Serpentico, which is Project Chaos or something. I didn't write it down. But it's the tag teams fighting. So it's Jericho and Luther. But what I found much more intriguing was Jake Hager versus Serpentico. There's a match I would pay to see. Hager would just swallow him whole. It'd be wonderful.
Well, you're going to see the tag match next week.
I guess so.
Because we got Jericho's 30th anniversary coming up.
Yes.
And who better to have a match with Jericho in his 30th anniversary if Lance ain't available than Dr. Luther?
Guys don't almost as long, maybe longer. I'm not even sure. Dr. Luther, by the way, he may have been on that show where Shooters the Clown turned heel. I'm not sure.
Well, I know for sure that he was on the show where his fucking crew pantsed me.
Yes.
So I hope Jericho beats the shit out of him next week.
That's also true.
If only I could be in the corner.
So Cassidy squashes Jericho with a senton for a near fall, and it feels like they're going to the finish, and then, like the other match, it just keeps going for like 5 more minutes. And Jericho tries a lion salt, but Cassidy gets the knees up, so Cassidy hits a lion salt, that gets 2. Cassidy hits a code breaker, that almost gets 2. He's just spamming the other guy's finishers, but then Cassidy tries something off the ropes, and Jericho catches him with a Judas effect for the win. And the Inner Circle attacks, but Hardy stays with the chair, and then, yes, Jericho and Hager are brawling with Luther and Serpentico again. Miro and Kip Sabian, are out at some bar somewhere discussing the bachelor party. They are, as they put it, playing with blue balls. They are throwing axes, which is not a metaphor. They're playing Pac-Man. And then a guy shows up who I have been told is from the King of Kong.
Yes.
A movie I have not seen.
I've been told massive heel.
I've been told massive heel, and I've also never been told by anyone, no, don't see the movie. Everyone who sees it says you need to see this movie. It's been like 10 years I haven't seen it, but I've only heard that I should see the movie. So they want to do something crazy for Kip's bachelor party. Rumspringer crazy, I think is what they said, which is like the term when the Amish go mad before they enter adulthood. And the guy's name is Billy Mitchell. He's a video game heel, and there you go. He's involved now. And for 2 guys, by the way, whose gimmick is they met playing video games, could you get a better guy?
Apparently not.
No. Dasha tries to interview the best friends. She asks the question, where are you at mentally? But before they can say anything, FTR interrupts. They say there's a spot at the top for guys like us and a spot in the middle for comedic backyard guys like you driving around your mommy's soccer van. And the best friends both raise up their fists, and FTR flinches, and Orange Cassidy casually dubs them weenies, and he goes out to wrestle 10 of the Dark Order.
Now, before we get to that, I was so busy talking about this tag match that we got set up next week with Luther and Serpentico. They did not talk about Jericho and Orange Cassidy, or Isaiah Cassidy. What a coincidence. Jericho's going after the Cassidys.
Yes.
Anyway, the first Jericho-Orange Cassidy match I thought was great. And it was like, man, these guys have never wrestled before. And they had this really good match. Like, if they ever wrestle again, it's going to be even better. And the second two matches, I did not think were as good as the first match. I thought the first match was by far the best match. This match with Isaiah Cassidy, I thought was better than both of the other Orange Cassidy matches. I think Jericho and Orange Cassidy, the first match, was the best.
Yes.
And I think that this one was the second best. Isaiah Cassidy, as we determined yesterday on Observer Radio, I believe this was his second singles match in his entire career.
Really?
He has done nothing but tag team matches.
He is a tag team specialist.
And he had one singles match other than that in his career that we know of.
Wow.
So this was his second ever singles match. And it was really fucking good. And Jericho gave him everything before he finally beat him. And quite frankly, you know, if Jericho hadn't lost twice to Orange Cassidy, I think this match would have been even better, because if Jericho hadn't done those jobs recently, I think people might have actually thought Isaiah Cassidy might beat Chris Jericho. But I think that because he had done those two jobs to Orange Cassidy, I don't think anybody actually thought that Isaiah Cassidy was winning. But Jericho gave him everything. They got some really good near falls in there. I thought this match was so good.
So it's Orange Cassidy versus 10. So the bell rings, and they do like two things, and like 20 seconds in, 10 grabs Orange in like body slam position, but then he spins him around like he's going to do a Uranage, like I think James Storm used to do that. A bunch of guys have done it. But in midair, he stops him and reverses it and flips him back into an end of days. It looked so awesome. It may have been the coolest move I saw anyone do on either show all night. It was just great. And it's this random move thrown in 20 seconds into a match wherein I don't think he got any more offense. The Dark Order does a hug to mock the best friends, but Orange does a big dive into all of them. He hits the Orange punch in the ring, hits the over-the-back pile driver. He gets the win, and with like 3 minutes, okay. MJF goes to meet with the Inner Circle. He has a gift for Chris Jericho to congratulate him on his big win. And in fact, he has gifts for everyone. It's personalized satin jackets for the entire team. Hager, big man, here's yours. Ortiz, you're going to look great in this one. And he's passing all these jackets out. And the Inner Circle guys are accepting the jackets. But you can tell they're also like not at all impressed or enjoying these. And they just want this douchebag to leave. And he goes through Hager.
I'm sure Proud and Powerful are really into these satin jackets.
Hager and Ortiz and Santana and Jericho.
How fast can we get these on offer up?
But then MJF looks in the box and says, there's not one there for Sammy. So he puts the heat on Wardlow. Was there another jacket you're supposed to put in this box, Wardlow? Wardlow insists he packaged all the jackets, and one was missing. MJF swears on his mother, Sammy, this was not intentional. Sammy says, whatever, Max, what are you doing in here? What the hell are you doing in here? And Jericho cuts him off. Whoa, Sammy. And then Jericho turns to Max. Whatever, Max, what are you doing here? What the hell are you doing in here? I laughed at that. So Max and Jericho go back to what they did almost a year ago. We're coming up on the
By the way, you know
anniversary.
what's so great about this is you know they've had two segments now where they kiss each other's ass.
Yes.
And then the first one they call each other idiots, and then whatever they call each
Loser.
other. loser. And then the second one, which was the best of all, where they explained that they were calling the limo driver and Shivani a loser and everything like that. But anyway, neither of these guys in storyline is an idiot.
No.
They both know that they hate each other.
Right.
But they're playing this game.
Yes. And each is aware the other guy hates him.
Yep. So MJF walks in and he's pretending to be all nice, but he's a douchebag because he didn't get a jacket for Sammy. Not to mention he got everyone satin jackets. And then Jericho is he's playing nice, but he also knows he hates this guy. So he does ask, "What the fuck are you doing in here? Why are you here?" So there is still that tension there, yes, even though they continue to kiss each other's ass.
Yes. And then, because this show rewards you for paying attention and having a memory, they go back to, it's been at least 9 months, when shortly after MJF turned on Cody, there was a segment where Max and Jericho were in the ring, and Jericho was asking, "Do you want to be in the inner circle?" And Max was saying, "Do you want me in the inner circle?" And there's a bit of almost like a I'll go ahead and say a romantic tension where they actually want to be together, but they both want the other guy to be the one to say it first. And here we are 9 months later, it's still going there. And Jericho asks, "Do you want to be in this inner circle?" And Max asks, "Do you want me in the inner circle?" They still want the other guy to make the first move. And finally, it goes nowhere. So MJF congratulates Jericho on 30 years. He leaves. After he's gone, Sammy Guevara is the one to say, "What a loser." But Jericho cuts him off and says, "Wait, perhaps he's not." Jericho has
All right,
some idea of what MJF is up to.
Well, okay. I'm totally overanalyzing this here, but I don't care. Okay?
Excellent.
All right. So MJF mentioned a few weeks ago that he was looking for a group to join. Okay?
He did, yes.
So it seems to me that MJF is going to end up a part of the inner circle. And I think it's going to be obviously a long-term storyline. And I think that in the end, obviously, they have to have a split. And MJF is such a fantastic heel. I presume that he would be a great babyface, and I'm sure someday he will be a great babyface. But to me, it makes much more sense if MJF joins the inner circle and then ultimately they all turn on Chris Jericho. And Jericho gets booted from the group that he formed, and Chris Jericho ends up being a babyface. Because Jericho always has to do something different. Mm-hmm. Jericho is not going to be the heel leader of the inner circle forever.
No.
He's gonna need another character. And he's not like old, but he is older. He's 50.
He's pretty old.
Well, I mean, he's not like 70 or something like that. But I mean, at 50 years old, there's the character of the old badass. The old babyface, grizzled badass. I feel like that's going to be Jericho's next big character, okay?
That'd work.
So anyway, if we presume, and I'm making a lot of presumptions here by going fully in that direction, that MJF joins the inner circle, they do whatever they do for a while, maybe even whatever, and then finally at the end, there's a big coup, and Jericho is ousted, probably with Sammy, because Sammy's going to be a babyface too at some point, and MJF takes over as the head of the inner circle, and Jericho goes babyface. So if we presume that that's the long term, then even looking back at this, Jericho doesn't like MJF, okay? But he is open to having him in the inner circle. Because clearly this character believes that even though I don't like this guy, this is a very, very talented guy. So I am willing to have him in the group if, like, he kisses my ass enough and says he wants to be in the group, right?
Yes.
But I don't feel that the MJF character has any respect for Chris Jericho. I see him as only wanting in so he can take over.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, I think it's all going to make sense. I don't know if it's going to go exactly like this. I don't know if it's going to go like this at all. But the way that they are planting these seeds, I can totally see it playing out like this, and I think it would be fantastic.
Yeah, there's we could probably talk for an hour about different ways they could do this and fantasy book it all. But your theory would work. It would be Chris Jericho as Megatron and MJF as Starscream, which I would heartily endorse. But more to the point, I know we're kind of joking. Jericho is 50, and he's still great for a 50-year-old. And he's one of the best guys on the show. And I'm not saying he needs to be. I'm not saying he's got 12 months left, or 2 years, or even 5 years. But he's on limited time. He won't be around for 10 years. And there's X number of guys.
He probably won't.
If anyone's going to, it's going to be him.
Dude. Yeah, exactly. If anybody could be around for 10 more years, I mean, he is honestly like a Ric Flair. Like, he's out there and he never gets hurt.
Yeah.
There's never any sort of injury. There's never anything that puts him on the shelf. I mean, he just keeps going.
He's still cranking out that lion salt with no problem.
It's not like when we watch those Nikolai Volkov matches, and Nikolai's like younger than we
are. No, it's
but
not like a Nikolai Volkov match.
No, but this is my point. Nikolai is 44, but he looks like he's 60.
Yes, okay.
So, he could go out there and play the old babyface badass because he fucking looks old. Jericho doesn't work like a dude who's 50 years old.
No.
So, there's no rush for him to play that old unless he feels like, I'm going to do 3 more years and I'm out of here. If you're going to do 3 more years and get out of here, then now's the time to play that character.
That's also true. But the point I was going to make is if you've got X number of years left, there's a certain list of guys who they've got to get in the ring with Jericho and ideally get wins over Jericho before it's all said and done. And right now, it's like Omega and MJF and maybe the last, like, Jungle Boy or something. But MJF is definitely on that list, is the point I'm trying to make. Britt Baker versus Red Velvet, which actually is the name of a pro wrestler. So the show was not live, as we mentioned, and there's a couple times in the show where I don't know what happened, but Excalibur had to go back and redo some commentary to promote this segment or that one. This is one of them. There's some very obviously edited in commentary there. This is not as long as Austin Theory versus Adam Cole, or as good as Austin Theory versus Adam Cole, but Red Velvet put up way, way more of a fight than you would think against Britt Baker. But eventually Britt won with the curb stomp. And then Reba gave her a glove so she could put on the lockjaw after the match like a good proper heel. Next week on Dynamite, it is the 30 years of Jericho celebration. There will be Jericho and Hager versus the Chaos Project. And like I say, it would have been better if they just announced this as Jericho's handpicked opponent for his 30th anniversary show. Then the brawl just seemed like unnecessary. Brian Cage versus Will Hobbs in Hoss Warfare. And Taz added the FTW title will be on the line.
Did they call it Hoss Warfare?
No, I made that up.
Oh, man.
I didn't make it up, but I did throw it in.
I'm disappointed.
There's still time, Brian. There's still a week. Brody Lee versus Cody in a dog collar match for the TNT title. And I believe they said we'll find out who faces Lance Archer at the anniversary show. So does that mean Moxley's going to have another title match next week, or are they talking about this match here?
I think I was so confused, but they were talking about the next match on this show.
Okay.
I could not figure out that graphic. I actually paused it, and I wrote it down because I was so baffled. Like, what in the fuck does this mean? Then I realized they were referring to the main event and not next week's show.
When it says who faces Archer, usually guys are fighting to face the champion. And for a split second, my brain convinced itself that Lance Archer had somehow won the championship at some point.
No, Vinny.
Yeah, that graphic could have been worded better.
I should note, by the way, I want to go back to Britt Baker. Some people, when they get hurt, they come back and they have ring rust. And some people, when they hurt, they come back and they're like just as good as when they left. She came back better than before she got hurt. And I don't even know how.
Well, she looked great for the 4 minutes they were. So she looked great for the 4 minutes they were out there. So Eddie Kingston comes out with the Lucha Bros, messing around with Bryce Remsburg. Says last week, he was in a bulldog choke against the champion, Jon Moxley. He did not tap out. He changes the subject and says, tonight, Moxley's got an open contract. TK gave him an open contract. It won't be me. I'm not feeling up to it. But last week, I was in that bulldog choke. I did not tap out. But Bryce Remsburg, you stopped the match. What the hell gave you the right to ring that bell? And Remsburg talks about being friends with Eddie for 18 years, but this isn't friendship. This is work. We are at work. At work, it's my job to protect you from yourself. And Eddie does not like this answer. He gives the boys the signal, but before they can murderize him, out comes Jon Moxley with a barbed wire bat to make the save. And Eddie does a short promo and then announces Moxley's surprise opponent, The Butcher. So it's Jon Moxley versus The Butcher. So two things. I mentioned earlier that these title shots, they used to be rare and big deals. Now it's back-to-back shows. One was not announced until it happened, really. And so they're getting less special that way. Two, the matches are always really, really good. So out comes The Butcher. And the fact of the matter is, within like 5 minutes, the announcers begin to make excuses for him. It's so hot here. It's so sweaty. That big man can't go this fast. Butcher looked blown up immediately. It's just him doing holds the entire time, because that's all he was capable of doing. At one point, he puts on like a half crab, and he put on some like a ankle lock from one knee, but even on one knee, he almost fell over. He is able to do a crossbody off the middle rope and not kill anyone, but then when Moxley kicks out, Butcher can't actually get off of him. There's a point where he's down and he's just on the mat, spread eagle, with one arm over his head and his other one on his heart. I legitimately thought he was having a heart attack.
God. Like, I could laugh about it now because he's fine.
He's fine.
But,
I watched it like
dude,
an hour ago, but
listen,
yes, bad things.
I watched this match and this guy was so gassed. And I don't know why. I mean, he, granted, is a tag team guy. But, I mean, it's not like when you're in a tag team, you don't work or you don't have cardio. The only thing that I can figure, and I have no idea, is that maybe because he found himself on the main event of a television show in 2020 in a match for the championship, that he just got so nervous
That could
that
happen.
he just had an adrenaline dump. Like, that's the only thing that I can figure, because he was exhausted.
Oh.
And when he was the one that actually hit a move, and then he laid flat on his back and he grabbed his heart, and I thought, oh my God, the Butcher's having a fucking heart attack in the middle of the ring. Now, I watched this on delay, and so I wasn't that worried, because I figured if the Butcher had a heart attack, I probably would have heard about it by now. Mm-hmm. But I was still concerned. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he made it through the match, but I guess, like, he was just exhausted when he got to the back. And I don't know, dude. Like, this way. And the funny thing was, it wasn't even a bad match.
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, it wasn't. Trust me, it wasn't a good match. It had to be the worst match that Moxley has had in AEW.
It was probably the worst AEW title match I've seen.
Sure, but I mean, Moxley was still out there doing his damnedest to like try to get a good match, and he's always works his ass off, and he's trying to work his ass off like the best he can without killing the other guy. I mean, it was not the worst match I ever saw. It certainly was not a good match. But it wasn't like a complete disaster outside of the guy just being completely blown up. It wasn't like they were missing spots left and right.
No.
It was just a really, really slow match because the dude was completely blown up.
You could argue falling over, applying a submission hold counts as botching a spot, but it was not the worst match I ever saw. It was not a good match. It was not a good TV main event, and it certainly was not a good World Championship match. Eventually, for the record, Moxley hits the paradigm shift and then applies the Bulldog choke and puts him out, and he is still the world champion. So there you go.
Well, I got to say, as we go to voting here, that this main event, I mean, I didn't think it was a disaster, like I said, but it was bad enough that when the show was over and then I watched NXT, when NXT was over, I was absolutely certain that I was going to vote for NXT this week. And I even said the same thing on Observer Live today. I said, you know, sometimes I watch these shows, I think I know who's winning, and then we review the shows, and sometimes I think the opposite, sometimes I think the same, sometimes whatever. So we have now reviewed both shows, and upon reviewing them, if I take out the main event of AEW, I mean, that was a really, really good show.
Everything else in that show was very good.
Yes. And so when I review them both, and when I review NXT first, and then we review AEW second, and all of the things that I loved on AEW until that main event, I'm going tie. I was sure that I was going to vote for NXT. But after looking at the rest of the card outside of that main event, that was a very, very good AEW show. There was good wrestling, there was good storylines, there was good build. I mean, a lot of NXT. I mean, the matches were good. There were some good matches on the show. The main event I loved. The Adam Cole match I loved. The build to the pay-per-view was great.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of build for the pay-per-view. So
Yeah.
I'm going tie.
Yeah, I kind of hate to do it because we've both done tie now 3 weeks in a row, but I'm also doing tie. AEW had the best opener for sure. NXT had the best main event for sure. So you look at the rest of the show, and AEW was probably like more fun to watch in a vacuum, but NXT did a really good job of getting me excited for TakeOver. Especially, they did a good job of getting me excited for Kyle O'Reilly in the main event. So, again, don't overthink it. I enjoyed both shows.
No,
It's a
you
tie.
should not feel bad. This is just a fun thing we do, Vinny. God damn it. It's fun, motherfucker. So it's just which show was better. If they were both great, then it deserves to be a tie. That's it. This is not fucking MMA. I allow 10-10 scores.
All right, it's 10-10.
Because I hate that fucking shitty scoring in MMA.
This was a 10-10.